This video is sponsored by Squarespace. I'm out again today shooting with the 14mm Lumix lens, but I did end up sending back the EM10 Mark II and ended up replacing it with a GX80, which I've owned once before. It's not quite as sunny in Manchester today. It is coming out a little bit, but there's been a lot of candid grey weather, flat light photography, which for 28mm actually isn't the worst. I was actually in London last weekend shooting with this a little bit, but also on a zoom with my A7C II. I might show you some of those photos a bit later in this video. But for now I want to get into some more 28mm photography again. So yeah, let's get into it. I always find the 28mm, I either lean for the super quiet, wider scenes, or, oh, train, come on, you gotta get the train. I'll never use that photo, but I'll show it to you. Who needs that photo? No one. But yeah, I find I either shoot between like 28mm wide or 28mm candid. It was a couple of years ago when I was doing like more dog photography with like wider focal length on film, and also I did like a video of portraits in London, again 28mm on film. I really enjoyed that because you fully were getting into someone else's space, but it wasn't just like the candid pop up and shoot sort of style. But I find the reason I like 28mm is that it lets you get further into a space. Like you can be super close to a subject or subjects, but you still see a lot of the context around them. Whereas, I mean, the same sort of goes for 35mm, I think it does. 35mm to me creates like tidier frames more easily, whereas 28mm definitely allows more mess. I think if you don't compose well, you can be left with a mess, which is often the case for me, I think most of the time. I'd like to take a moment to share with you the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. You might know already, but I've been using Squarespace long before they sponsored the channel. I use Squarespace to run my store and publish my monthly newsletter using their email campaign tools. Updating my street photography portfolio using their image galleries couldn't be easier, and it's the perfect way to showcase your work outside of social media. Their easy to use templates and drag and drop design tools mean that you can create a professional looking website with no prior web design skills. Why not get started at squarespace.com with a free trial? And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/GeorgeHolden to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So, does shooting on a 28mm automatically make you a better street photographer? Obviously not, but there are definitely like reasons why 28mm is so well suited for street photography. So it gives you that really wide field of view, and it also gives you the opportunity to be able to have much more of your frame in focus. Like for example, on this 14mm for 4/3, it's a 28mm, and the maximum, the brightest aperture is only 2.5, which gives like a full frame like f5. And that's already a pretty deep depth of field. Like if you're at 5.6 on full frame, you're going to get a lot of things in focus. And a lot of street photography, especially if you're into the candid side of street photography, is about getting more in focus in those quick, like reactive or proactive candid moments. That's part of why I really like shooting at 28mm and 35mm. But just last weekend, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I was actually taking photos at the Barbican in London using my A7C and a Tamron 28-75. And honestly, I pretty much only use that lens when I'm shooting B-roll, which is primarily what I was doing that day. But actually taking some photos with that lens as well just made me appreciate having the flexibility of a zoom lens again. So let's get back to George in the studio to get into some of those photos, because I had a great session. As I was saying, last weekend I was in London, partially for the photography and video show, but also to shoot some photos and video around the Barbican Centre. While I was shooting B-roll, I was using my Tamron 28-75 on my A7C II, which is my typical on-the-go B-roll setup with an ND filter. But weirdly, I rarely use that lens setup for photography. Usually, I would always go for a prime lens, but a zoom lens was actually quite refreshing. I was using an ND filter on my lens for the most part because I was primarily shooting video, so the images that I did capture were kind of here and there flicking into photo mode for a couple of shots. So I was actually quite surprised when I snapped a couple of my favourite images from the first 3 months of this year. Specifically, these few shots stand out to me. We had a whole bunch of kids who were running along this little strip in between the two bodies of water at the Barbican, and a couple of these look a bit similar with kind of people laid in the foreground, but then there's this one shot from overhead that really just is completely different to most of my style of photography. And sure, another photographer could have shot this at that time, but being in the right place at the right time to capture an image like this was really so much fun. Really, I didn't have to do much work to bring out like that magic in that golden hour glow with all these people doing fun and interesting things. But what I did do to bring out this magic a little bit more was using some of my presets. You can pick up my Kodak film stock presets, my Fujifilm film stock presets, and my Naturally Filmic presets. And you can save by buying all 3 packs together in the 3-pack bundle, and viewers of this video can save an extra 20% by using this unique code at checkout. I stand by these as some of the best film simulation presets you can buy, and I use these on 100% of the images you see me share online, including on Instagram, where I've been posting every single day this year, so go follow to see more images over there. What really stood out to me in the images from London wasn't the lens I was using or the camera that I was shooting on, but it was where I was and what I was photographing. Not only was there such good light that day, but also there was so much life that day. And that is so much of what makes your images feel alive, is when you are somewhere photographing people doing things and capturing life as it's happening. And this reminds me that the reason that I love some people's work when I see photos from around the world in different places, they're rarely photographing people doing the usual day-to-day tasks, and they're photographing people in remarkable places, often doing remarkable things. Great photographers go where life is, and they don't care so much about the camera they're taking or the lens they're shooting on. That stuff should always be secondary or even just like predetermined, and you should always be focusing on where you are shooting much more than what you are shooting with. There's a video I made about 2 years ago that I'm really looking forward to making a part 2 of in kind of a similar sort of series that I'd be really curious to know if you want to see more of. Specifically this video here, where I was doing portraits of people in London on a 28mm lens. I'm interested in doing another video like this, so if you haven't seen it before, go watch it and leave a comment telling me what you'd like to see in a new version of this video.